They would.
They have.
They could.
They can.
This is a ding-dong delicious.
You look like an emu.
No.
It is insane.
The hottest TV this summer. Press red to watch now on BBC iPlayer. There are some things you can't just see once. Relive Glastonbury. Watch now on BBC iPlayer. Listen on Sounds.
See, hear, live the greatest rivalry in cricket. All the best moments from every test, every evening.
You can't take your eyes off it.
The Ashes, today at the Test. Watch for highlights now on BBC iPlayer.
Ten o'clock now, the news on BBC One with Reeta Chakrabarti.
Tonight at 10 in France, the funeral of the teenager shot by police is held as fears grow of a fifth night of violent nationwide protests. In Paris, police are out in force. There are 45,000 officers on the streets across the country. Ministers say they will stand firm.
I think that everyone has understood that the state will not back down. I think that the message of responsibility over youth given to parents is very important.
The ongoing crisis has forced President Macron to cancel a scheduled visit to Germany. Also tonight, Twitter applies a temporary limit to the number of tweets that users can read in a day.
3, 2, 1.
The European Space Telescope Euclid blasts off in a quest to discover what the universe is made of. And England's batsmen struggle again as they chase a record score at Lord's in the second Ashes Test. Good evening. The nationwide unrest in France over the police shooting of a teenager has prompted ministers to again deploy 45,000 officers on the streets, with reinforcements sent to Lyon and Marseille. President Macron cancelled his scheduled visit to Germany after another 1,300 people were arrested last night amid rioting and looting in several cities and towns. The funeral of the 17-year-old who was shot on Tuesday, Nahel, took place in the Paris suburb of Nanterre. Our Paris correspondent Lucy Williamson has the latest.
4 days on, the death of a teenager in a Paris suburb is still leaving its mark, 500 miles away in Marseille. The government says violence across France was less intense last night, but looting and vandalism seem to be spreading.
They entered the shop 50 times. They went in and out. People had shopping carts. It's a catastrophe. I've never seen anything like it in my life. I can't find the words.
I'm 43 now, and the country has been deteriorating for years. Frankly, it's unbearable. We can't go on like this. We really need to get to grips with the situation.
Tonight, police moved quickly to disperse crowds gathering in the city, braced for a fifth night of violence. The Interior Minister said the state would not back down.
The entire ministry is mobilizing the same number of forces tonight across the country. 45,000 police officers with helicopters, specialist intervention units and the Republican Guard. We will also considerably increase our forces in Marseille and Lyon.
Nanterre, where 17-year-old Nael was buried today, is littered with debris. Messages of rage in the burnt-out vehicles and the graffiti. God saw it all. Nael is everywhere here, but you won't see his photo or hear his surname, kept private at the request of his family. At the cemetery too, public interest in Nael grated against private ties. The message to journalists here: get a camera out at your peril. Even mourners were banned from filming on their phones. No Snapchat, no Insta, they were told. The funeral marks the end of Niall's short life here in Nanterre, but the story of his death lives on. He's been adopted as a symbol by people across the country, as here at home, his mother buries her son. One woman who said she knew Niall a little told us the violence triggered by his death wasn't helpful.
Burning everything is useless, but if there are riots, it's because the police are looking for it. It's irritating when they check young people's IDs 10 times a day.
Rioting continued last night. Cities across France, from Marseille to Nanterre, lit up by burning vehicles and fireworks aimed directly at police. The prayers in Nanterre today were for Niall, but there are other prayers here too, for justice or simply for peace. Well, there's been a bit of tension here on the Champs-Élysées in the last few minutes. A group of around 150 young people, some of them look to be very young indeed, perhaps mid-teens, pushed down the avenue by a line of riot police. Any violence here would really change the situation. The government's not taking any chances. There are groups of riot police and gendarmes all along this avenue. The Interior Minister said last night he thought the violence was subsiding in intensity. The next few hours, all across France, will test that theory.
Lucy, many thanks. Our correspondent Lucy Williamson there in Paris. The owner of Twitter, Elon Musk, has announced that it is temporarily limiting the number of tweets that people can read in a day. Verified accounts are being limited to 6,000 posts a day, and unverified accounts can only read 600 a day. Joe Winwood joins me now. Joe, tell us what's happening and why.
So earlier today, thousands of people started to report problems with Twitter, and they were saying they got a message saying rate limit exceeded. Now, a couple of hours ago, we got an indication of why that was happening in a post by Elon Musk, and he said that they were limiting the number of messages that people could see in a day. Now, if you're verified, if you pay a subscription, you can see 6,000. If you are a normal user, you can see 600, and if you're a new user who's unverified, just 300. Now, he said this was to tackle extreme levels of data scraping and system manipulation, i.e. people taking Twitter data and using it for their own purposes. But of course, many people think actually the real reason behind this is to force users onto Twitter Blue to pay $8 a month for the subscription. Now, there are a few other questions people have been asking. So, do adverts count as part of your limit? And if you just scroll past something, does that count too? Now, I was trying to find out, but before I could get the answers, I ran out of tweets.
Joe, many thanks. 7 Just Stop Oil protesters were arrested while trying to halt the annual Pride Parade in central London. The Metropolitan Police removed demonstrators who managed to briefly stop the march. The protesters, who are LGBTQ+ members of Just Stop Oil, said they were angry that the parade organisers accepted sponsorship from what they described as high-polluting industries. Households in England, Scotland and Wales should see a reduction in what they pay for gas and electricity as a new price cap came into force today. Some analysts suggest that bills for homes using a typical amount of energy could come down to around £2,000 a year, but that is still much higher than 4 years ago. Mark Ashdown has more.
After 18 months of rising energy bills, finally they seem to be stabilising. But for millions of people, it's still a struggle. Carly lives with her young son in a small flat in London.
It is a relief that they're sort of stabilising, but they're still really high. They're still inaffordable, particularly with the cost of everything else going up.
In 2019, Ofgem introduced a maximum price which suppliers can charge for a unit of gas and electricity. The cap, as it's known, is based on the energy consumption of an average-sized household. So if you do use more energy, you could end up paying more. Now, for years, it was quite stable, but after Russia invaded Ukraine, prices shot up. So it's now reviewed every 3 months. Now, it peaked in January at nearly £4,300 a year. The good news is since then it has started to come down. By April it was set at £3,280. But remember, back in October the government brought in its energy price guarantee to support households. So a typical bill was actually capped at £2,500 a year. Now, from July, Ofgem's new cap is now below that level at £2,074. So the average bill should come down by about £426 a year. But that's still nearly double where bills were before the COVID pandemic. Analysts say they could stay this high for some years.
We think that, unfortunately, prices are likely to stay higher until the end of this decade. That's because the competition for energy on the global stage is going to continue.
Charities are warning that 6 million households are now in fuel poverty. Ofgem says it supports vulnerable consumers, and anyone struggling with their bills should seek advice from their supplier. Mark Ashdown, BBC News.
The head of America's intelligence agency, the CIA, says the war in Ukraine and last week's mutiny in Russia by the Wagner group of mercenaries have provided his agency with a once-in-a-generation opportunity to recruit spies. Let's speak now to our security correspondent, Gordon Carrera, who's in Kiev for us. So tell us more, Gordon.
Yes, these were unusual public remarks from the head of the CIA, Bill Burns, saying that mutiny last weekend had revealed the corrosive impact that the war was having within Russia and that disaffection would only grow. And he said the CIA was being provided with a once-in-a-generation opportunity as a result, which it was not wasting. What he meant by that was that the job of the CIA is to recruit agents, spies within Russia who are willing to provide secrets from, say, the military or the government. And his message was simple: we're open for business, he said. And he also revealed that the CIA had recently published a video on social media in Russian with details on how to covertly contact the CIA on the dark web, which had had 2.5 million views in the first week. These were remarks to the Ditchley Foundation, but he didn't address the report that he paid a secret visit here to Kyiv just a few weeks ago for discussions with Ukrainian officials about their counter-offensive and their ambition to make enough gains from Russia to put pressure on the Russian leadership and perhaps even push them to the negotiating table from a position of Ukrainian strength.
OK, many thanks, Gordon. A space mission to try to solve some of the biggest mysteries of the universe has launched from Cape Canaveral in Florida. The Euclid spacecraft will make a 3D map of the cosmos to help scientists understand the nature of dark matter and dark energy. Our science editor Rebecca Morell explains.
3, 2, 1.
Heading into space to solve some of the most profound cosmic mysteries. The European Space Agency's Euclid spacecraft is on its way. What we can see in the cosmos makes up a tiny fraction of what's really there. Euclid will aim to shed light on what's called the dark universe. The challenge is we can't see it, and scientists don't really know what it is.
It's just like trying to set off on a ship before people knew where land was in different directions. Now we're just trying to map out the universe and try and understand where we fit into it and how we've got here.
The spacecraft will be making a vast 3D map of the cosmos. It's trying to understand phenomena called dark energy and dark matter. So what is dark matter? Galaxies like our own Milky Way are held together by gravity. The force comes from everything that's in them: the stars, the planets, the dust. The thing is, all of this material doesn't provide enough gravity to stop these great spirals from flying apart. There's something else there, a cosmic glue that we can't see, that adds the extra gravity to bind them together. And that's dark matter. And what about the other missing part of the cosmos, dark energy? Since the Big Bang, the universe has been expanding, with galaxies moving ever further apart. Scientists had thought that over time this would slow down, but actually this expansion is speeding up. And it's thought that a mysterious force, dark energy, is driving this.
It could enormously influence the fate of our universe. How far is it going to expand? Is it going to go forever and accelerate? Is it going to just rip apart? Or will it perhaps collapse back down again? And understanding that fifth force, if that's what dark energy is, will help us understand, not only where we came from, but where we're going in this universe.
It will take the spacecraft 6 years to complete its map of the sky, but scientists say the wait will be worth it. Rebecca Morell, BBC News.
Time for all the sport now. Let's join Ollie Foster at the BBC Sports Centre. Ollie.
Thank you, Reeta. Good evening. England's cricketers need another 257 runs for victory on the final day of the second Ashes Test at Lord's to avoid going 2 down in the series. Australia need just the 6 wickets. Here's our sports correspondent, Joe Wilson.
Here they'll show you exactly how an expensive cricket bat is constructed, crafted by eye to perfection. In the middle, even the great batters make mistakes. Australia's Steve Smith. Can you believe it? But this was England's tactic, short pitch bowling, catching. And while it was working behind the scenes, someone was slowly preparing. The effort sapped England. Ben Stokes, remember, is carrying an injury, but nothing compared to Nathan Lyon. Calf muscle torn, now he came out to join in. He could only aim for the boundary. That 4 helped Australia to 279. Lyon was just blocking out the pain. But his efforts ensured from Lord's a hero's reception. Well, after the hobble, the chase. England needed 371 in their second innings to win the Test match. Australia, of course, now hunting wickets. Mitchell Starc to Ollie Pope, perfect. Pat Cummins at pace to Joe Root. Australia's captain, bruised-eyed gleaming, now saw Harry Brook. But the next wicket. Mitchell Starc thought he'd got Ben Duckett, but when the TV umpire saw the replay, ball, body, ground, he decided he wasn't in control of the catch. Australia confused, England 114 for 4, and still hoping. Joe Wilson, BBC News, at Lord's.
Well, England's women are also up against it in their Ashes series. They lost the first T20 by 4 wickets. They'd set Australia 154 for victory at Edgbaston. And thanks to an unbeaten 61 from Beth Mooney, they've reached that in the final over. They're now 1 win away from retaining the Ashes. England Lionesses could only draw 0-0 against Portugal in their final warm-up match before they head to the World Cup in Australia and New Zealand next week. Our correspondent Katie Gornall was at the game in Milton Keynes.
A send-off for the European champions. By August, the odds say these fans could be welcoming England home as world champions, but there's more than a few hurdles to overcome first. With key players out injured, fresh faces have been drafted into this World Cup squad, and that's not all that's changed. Last summer's starting left-back is now playing up front for England. Rachel Daly finished the season as the WSL's top scorer. Early on, she was making herself a nuisance. Portugal, heading to their first World Cup, frustrated England. At half-time, England sent for those they'd left out. Alessia Russo very nearly made an instant impact.
Round the goalkeeper, will she get there?
There was no late drama for England, and after a frustrating afternoon, Serena Wiegmann has much to ponder.
This wasn't quite the rousing send-off that fans here would have wanted. Now England have one more game to fine-tune, a behind-closed-doors friendly against Canada in Australia before their World Cup begins. Katie Gornall, BBC News in Milton Keynes.
Finally, identical twins, Adam and Simon Yates, finished first and second on the opening stage of the Tour de France today. British riders are on different teams, but they work together on the finish into Bilbao. Over 2,000 miles will be covered over the next 3 weeks, with the first 3 stages starting in Spain. And that, Rita, is all your sport.
Many thanks, Ollie. Now, before we go, Laura Kunsberg has details of her show on BBC One tomorrow morning at 9.
The NHS is turning 75, but there are stresses and strains on the service, perhaps like never before. Tomorrow, live on the programme, we'll have the first big TV interview with its boss, Amanda Pritchard. Join me for that and much more too at 9 here on BBC One.
And that's all from us. Good night.
Hello there. There won't be too many changes for the second half of the weekend. We've still got the cool and blustery winds blowing, bringing more showers to northern parts of the UK. This is where the showers have been over the past few hours, and this is where the showers are more likely to be for the next few hours. Most other parts of the UK will be dry. The cloud will break up more. The winds will ease a little bit as well. Temperatures should remain in double figures, but it will be cooler and fresher than it was last night across England and Wales. And here It'll be a generally sunny start. The cloud will build up, mostly fair weather cloud. The odd light shower for North Wales, a few showers for Northern England and Northern Ireland. The bulk of the showers again driving into Scotland, some of them heavy, possibly even with some thunder. Strongest winds in Scotland, but blustery elsewhere, and cool too. Temperatures ranging from 17 in Scotland and Northern Ireland to 22 in the southeast of England. And we'll keep those cool, blustery winds going for the start of next week. That weather front in northern Scotland still there.